Matt Lee, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. I've known you for a little while. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yes, we are on the West Coast, so as proper musicians, it's 10 a.m. ish or so, and we're both just waking up.
I sort of was awake all night, but that's another story.
We're definitely going to get into that because that's an important story, especially for right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what? Let's do this. I want people to get to know you. So
Sure.
what I always am curious about, how did you get started in music? Because a lot of times people don't always start on the saxophone, but how'd you get started in music? How'd you get started on saxophone?
It's really interesting, and it's kind of bizarre. I started late. I have zero, musical education. I never went to school. I didn't play in band. I didn't play in high school. I didn't play in junior high. My grandfather was a choir director in the church, and so he always sang, and I was around it. My aunt played guitar and also sang, so I was always kind of intrigued by it, but never thought about playing a sax or a guitar or drums or anything like that. And it wasn't until 1997. And I just had, this sort of voice in my head from the higher powers that said, go play, you need to play a saxophone. And what's funny is I never even listened to jazz. I didn't know anything about jazz. I didn't know anything about blues. I actually used to listen to more like rock and roll, heavy metal, like Metallica. When I was in high school, I was a big Metallica guy. And so it's such a far difference. And, so I call up grandma, and it wasn't for my grandma, I wouldn't be playing the saxophone. And I called her at the time, I really wasn't making much money. And she goes, well, let's go look at a saxophone. So I remember getting on Craigslist, which I haven't been on that in a long time. And I'm looking around and, they're like $200, $300, $400 for like an alto sax. So I remember driving to Irvine with my grandma and trying a few saxophones. I knew nothing. I mean, I've never even held a saxophone. And I ended up with my first saxophone was a Selmer Bundy alto.
Oh, good. That's a good choice.
And I had no idea whether it was good or not, but for whatever reason, it felt the best. And I got it. I had no clue what I was doing. And the guy's like, why don't you just try to blow some notes? I'm like, well, what do I do here? Put your fingers here. And I don't care what it sounds like, just blow. So I was able to, bark out some notes. And to him, he said, man, you actually sound pretty good. And I'm like, really? So I go, okay. Well, so grandma's like, we're going to buy this. So she bought it for me. The only education I ever got was I went and bought my first book. I think it's called, you would probably know. What's that? The Essentials. What's that book?
Essential Elements 2000?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I got that essential book, and I only bought the book to know where do you put your fingers on this thing to make a note or make a sound. And I basically learned the fingering, and I from that point on, I did one time for kicks. I went to a lesson, and by the time I went to my first lesson, it was about 2 weeks in. And I went in the room, and I had been playing for about 2 weeks, just noodling around. I'm sure I sounded absolutely awful. And the instructor played keyboard and saxophone. And he's like, let me just hear you play. So I go, okay. So I go, what do I play? I don't know what to play. He goes, just play anything. So I go, okay. So I start playing. And then he immediately gets on his keyboard and starts playing around with whatever I'm doing. And it ended up being a jam session. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then he jumped on the saxophone. And then when I heard him play, I thought, gosh, I mean, I don't sound that far, tone wise. I think my tone was almost as good as his. And it's not being arrogant. I thought, oh my gosh, I can do this on my own. And that was it. And from that point on, I just learned myself. I did nothing but ear train. I ear trained myself for years. And I would play with, some of the Grover Washington was probably my number one. And I would literally I put on any of his albums. I would try to play along with him, and failed miserably. But it just took years and years, and I started listening to some of the nuances, some of the phrasing. I learned very quickly that pitch was very, very important. Like I learned that playing a lot of notes didn't matter if you weren't in tune. So my big focus really was tone and pitch. Playing in tune and having a good tone. Don't worry about how many notes you play. That comes later. You'll pick that up later. So, and that's what I did. And I'd say within the first couple of years of doing it that way, I think I played in my first band, like say 2 years later, I played with this blues rock band at this kind of hole in the wall bar I used to play at every Friday night called the Wizards in Riverside.
Okay.
And I did that, and that's where it really, and at that point I had only played alto, nothing else. And then I got more into listening to Kenny G and some of these other type of artists. And I really had this liking towards soprano. And then I remember going to look at a soprano, and they're saying, "Are you really sure you want to start on a soprano? This is going to be probably one of the harder ones for you to play in tune." And for whatever reason, the soprano has always been the easiest horn for me to play. And I can't tell you why. I have no clue. And maybe it's just, everyone, has like their own voice. And I would say my true voice is probably soprano, and then alto tenor is probably about the same. And so I fell in love with the soprano sax. And there was years where I only played soprano for like 4 or 5 years straight, nothing else. I actually sold the alto and didn't even get back into playing alto tenor for, years later. And then from that point, I played with some other bands, some smooth jazz bands. And then I met a dear friend of mine that we're still really good friends, Mark Norris, and he's a fantastic saxophone player. He was doing these solo gigs and basically going to, restaurants and bars and places, and he would have tracks. And I think back then we had these floppy disks. You'd have to put like the disc in.
Yep.
I don't even know if we had the what do you call it? The not the the Apple. I forgot what they call it. I can't even think of it. What was that little Apple player that you'd have that you listen to your music? What do they call it?
The iPod.
iPod.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this was before iPod. I actually had to go buy a Yamaha keyboard that had the floppy disk, and I was playing MIDI tracks. So I would take out, Grover Washington, Kenny G, Boney J, all these guys that I'm actually friends with now, which is kind of funny. But
that's awesome.
And I would just kind of play along with it, and I would just say I got better and better year by year, and just got, and I did solo gigs for pretty much that point on. I just got to play the music I liked, and I continued to work on my pitch and tone. And, from that point, I got called to do I got actually opened up for Jefferson Starship, which became Starship.
Yeah.
I played, I think it was 2003. I played at the Temecula Balloon and Wine Festival. They have it every year. And I got to open up for Starship. And that was a really big deal. And from that gig, this is when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California. I got a phone call from what I thought was a spam call. Some say, Mr. Schwarzenegger would like you to play at a private, private party. And would you be interested? And I thought, is this a scam call? Is this real? And the more I talked, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. She goes, I was actually at the concert watching Starship, and you were there playing before. So I kind of got discovered through that, and I end up playing for Arnold Schwarzenegger solo, no band.
That's awesome.
And that was the coolest thing, because he was like an idol as I grew up. I mean, as a young boy, all young boys love Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator.
Yeah.
And Conan the Barbarian and all that. So here I am now playing for him. And he actually, I'll never forget, asked me if I could play Summertime. And I said, sure. That's the song I play every week. So I played it. He got up. We were doing it during dinner, and he got up, gave me a standing applause. And And then everybody stood up and applauded. And then he came over and offered a cigar. He goes, this is my private collection of cigars. Would you like to smoke a cigar with me? I said, absolutely. And I remember just hanging off in the corner. There's all these Secret Service people that, you know, just like you see in movies, all wearing tuxedos with earpieces and guns. And it was really something else. And then I also got to open up for Christopher Cross at the Temecula Theater. I want to say it was in 2005 or 6. Really nice theater in Temecula. So those are my like bigger gigs. And then all the other stuff was I worked with a booking agent, and I just played a lot of corporate events and private parties and stuff like that. And, you know, and from that point, it kind of led me to where I am now. You know, I just kept doing what I was doing. And to be honest with you, with this music, you know, my music career now, if it wasn't for my wife, Jamie, I probably wouldn't even have released a CD or done any singles. She's like, why don't you do it? Everybody's always asking, do you have a CD? Do you have any songs we can buy? And I'm like, I just was like, I was happy doing with what I was doing. I just didn't feel like the need to go do any of that. And then she got me thinking. I'm like, you know, maybe I should do this. And so last year, the conversation came up. She's like, you got to do at least one song. And I'm like, all right, I'll do one song. And then one song turned into 5 songs, you know, and now I would have to say I'm sort of hooked into it because I really enjoy the process of creating music, writing it, and seeing where it takes me.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions. Okay. The first one though is this. Starting in 1997, like how old were you approx?
Well, I'm 49 now. So
Okay.
whatever that would be.
Okay.
I'd be in my, 20s? Early
Yeah, something
20s?
like that. Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So
cool.
I started way late. And like I said, never went to any no training, no music school, no band, no nothing. I just picked it up and it just came natural to me. It felt like, it was almost like it felt like I had played the saxophone in another life. It was weird.
Wow.
It was strange.
It's so weird because, you know, a couple of questions here. Could you have ever foreseen yourself, 1997, right? Just picking up the saxophone, and now here you are, you know, over 20 years later, right? You got some singles coming out, you know, one's out, you know, coming out on digital and stuff like that, but performing for Governor Schwarzenegger, opening for Starship, Jefferson Starship. Could you have ever foreseen that at 1997?
Never at all. Never at all. I never, you know, I did it because I loved it. I did it for the love of music because actually by trade, when I graduated high school, I went into college and I'm actually, I think I may be one of 2 recording artists that are actually medical people. I'm actually a respiratory therapist by trade.
Oh,
So
I interviewed,
I
interviewed Chris Godber, and he's also
so me and Chris Godber, I think maybe the only 2 respiratory therapists that are musicians that are got songs. So I got into that because you know the whole thing is I love helping people. I've had a passion for helping people. It was just the way I was raised. My grandfather was that way. And, you know, and through music, I'm able to do that too. I used to go in the hospital and I would play for kids that were sick, that, you know, in the pediatric ICU. I'd walk around room to room with my soprano sax and just do music therapy while I was on the clock working.
Oh, wow.
And I did that for many years. And yeah, so it's kind of a strange thing. And now I'm at a point where now it's looking like it's going to be a full-time thing now, you know?
The music's a full-time thing.
Yeah.
Oh, let me, actually, I'm going to go left turn here. During COVID, were you doing respiratory therapy work?
Absolutely.
You were? Wow.
I treated hundreds and hundreds of patients that were dying, that were on life support. And so, like, you know, my normal day would look like this. I basically get up, I go out and I help people that, you know, are having respiratory issues. And I get home, I work on music. Of course, I got the Westcoast Sax thing that we'll probably talk about shortly, but I'd be doing Westcoast Sax, my music, and my medical during the day. And that's been my life for up until I'd say last year. And then it's all music now.
How did that work during COVID as a respiratory therapist impact your music in any way, shape, or form?
It's just, you know, it gives you an appreciation for life. You know, you're helping people that are dying. and your heart goes out to them. And I think it has affected the way I play, more of an emotional sort of level, if that makes sense. You have a different appreciation for life and you wanting to help people, and just sort of changes you.
Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you for doing that, for your service with that. You mentioned before you did a lot of ear training. Now, a lot of people
Yes.
may not know what that means. I have an idea, but I'm not going to put my assumptions out there. But can you talk about ear training, what that means to you? Does it mean going to a piano? I'll get my piano out here and going and just playing intervals and stuff, or is it
No, not
something
at
else?
all. No. So my definition, again, I don't even know if it's the correct definition. I just call it ear training. I would literally put on Grover Washington, Wine Light, Mr. Magic, all the great songs, and I would literally play it. And I would attempt, remember the key word is attempt, to try to follow along, and failed miserably. But I would pick up on these little nuances, phrasing, how they phrased, how they articulated the notes, how they stayed in tune. And I would just go over and over and over. And I must play the same song for an hour, just going over it and over it. And I would get a little bit better each time. And then, at some point, maybe it was days later, I was able to pretty much follow along and be pretty darn close as far as phrasing and articulating and trying to keep pitch, and also putting that emotion and that feel behind it. And that was my definition of ear training, was listening to the greatest saxophone players on the planet. Also, like, some other big influences were like James Brown, Bill Withers, Curtis Mayfield. Those were very big influences. After I got into jazz, I started having a strong connection with soul and Motown and some funky stuff. And I would listen to them, and I kind of started feeling like I'm doing like the same thing they're doing. My voice is my saxophone. I'm basically singing through my saxophone. I kind of felt like a vocalist, and I cannot sing. Trust me, you do not want to hear me sing. I mean, maybe in a karaoke bar after a couple drinks, you might be okay. But I kind of looked at it very similar. Like they're doing the same thing. They're just singing, and I'm singing through my saxophone.
What's interesting to me, my assumption was right in terms of ear training. The best way to do ear training is to, learn songs by ear. And what people get stuck with is they feel it's so hard. It's like, I can't do this. It's just too hard. It's too complicated. I'd rather look at a piece of sheet music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know really what you're doing is transcription. And transcription, you don't have to write things down. You learn stuff by ear. But can you remember what it was like when you were first doing ear training transcription, and how you got past any of like these possible hurdles, if you even felt these hurdles at all? Like, do you have any advice for people that, it's just hard for them to do what you did?
Yeah. And, it's funny, to this day, I don't even read music. Nick, if you gave me a piece of music to look at, I could tell you, oh yeah, this is F, G, A, I can do that. But I'm not able to play by reading. My brain and my fingers don't work the same way. So I really didn't have any hurdles other than just trying to improve on the quality of my pitch and the way I would articulate my breaths, my vibrato. Vibrato was a very big thing for me. And for me, Kenny G probably has one of the best vibratos out there, the most delicate, precise. And so vibrato wise, I picked up a lot of it from him, to be real honest. But I liked the way like Grover had a different sort of groove and feel. And so I would say I had quite a few mentors, people that I really admired. And I didn't find it, I enjoyed it so much that I didn't really find it a hurdle. I'd say patience is the big thing. A lot of people just give up too early. It's just like, I can't do this. It's too hard. You just got, I feel like if you want it bad enough and if you're willing to put the work in, it will come in time. So to me, it was just repetition, really, over and over and over. And then I would record myself and go, oh my gosh, I was so out of tune there. And that part was good, but the rest of it was not good. And then I would work on the areas where I was not doing well.
I think you just mentioned something really key. You said you would record yourself doing it. And most people don't do that. And the thing is, other questions I get from people are, all right, well, how do I know if I'm out of tune? And if I'm out of tune, how do I fix it? So what were you thinking at the time?
And that's a good point. So what I did a lot, part of my ear training, because you don't know what you don't know in the beginning, right? When you're new, you don't necessarily really know. I would play with a tuning meter. So I would have like my Grover Washington, say, playing, and I'd have my sax and I'd have my tuning meter sitting over here. And I would sort of like kind of keep in track. I'd kind of peek at it, not the whole time, but I'd peek at it. Oh, I'm a little sharp. And then I would just start, if my mouthpiece was in the correct position on the cork, I knew a lot of how to do with the embouchure, maybe pinching down too much, or maybe whatever it was. And I would just kind of keep an eye on that tuner, and I would just kind of glance at it. And you do that for several years, then you get to a point where you don't even have to do it. Immediately, like I know, like when I put it on, I'm flat, I'm sharp. And then, you make the adjustment. But I'm a big proponent for tuners. For anybody that's new and they're trying to ear train, and maybe reading music isn't the easiest thing, get yourself a good tuner. Pick out some people that you love, that you admire, and just play and play and play and play and check your pitch. That, to me, the pitch is number one. Like if you don't have a good pitch, then really you don't have anything. You got to have a good pitch. You got to be relatively in tune. No one's perfect. I'm not even perfect in tune, but you get it where you're pretty close. And even with, as you're a saxophone player, so this, you can hide some of that with a little vibrato and different things. You can hide it. Like if you have a saxophone that's notorious to be a little sharp in this one little part of the horn, where I might have to throw a little extra vibrato there to kind of hide it a little bit. So there's always those little tricks, and you just kind of learn it. I sort of started learning that on my own. I'm like, okay, I can hide this a little bit.
Yep. And it's funny, you mentioned that too, like, tenor saxes, even alto saxes, like fourth line D will be sharp. It'll be stuffy on a tenor. The fourth space E can be sharp. Certain models of horns, you use front E. I was just talking with my students last night about this. Front E on a tenor, on some models doesn't sound as great, and it can be very sharp, so you have to know your horn. You have to learn your horn. You got to know your horn.
Yeah. And the correct setup too. Like when I started out, I can tell you my first tenor mouthpiece was a Brill Hart level air with the duck bill. Funny duck bill looking thing.
Yeah.
And I remember, again, I bought it on Craigslist for like $50. And I think at the time I thought it was the greatest thing, but as you progress, as you start to find your sound, you start to figure out, I need more of this. I need a little more edge. I need a little more, whatever it may be. And you just start developing. I think, for me, I think as musicians that we're continually getting better. I don't think there's one musician that you would ever ask that says they've nailed it. They're done. Not even the greatest, like a Michael Brecker, as great as they are, they would probably tell you that they're still not where they want to be.
And that's what makes them great. That's what absolutely makes them great, because it's the humble. Yeah. It's being humble.
Yeah. Yeah. We all can get better. And sometimes they're just small little gains. And you're like, wow, I like that. And then it kind of, you incorporate it, and then it becomes normal. Then you're like, okay, I've checked that off, but now I need to work on this little spot. So it's like a journey. I look at this music and playing as a journey, and that's how I see it.
Yeah, I want to trace back to something, because you're talking about the word journey, and I'm definitely going to get to mouthpieces in a minute for sure. But it's interesting because you mentioned that you listened to Metallica growing up. You listened to rock. on the radio. And I could don't totally relate to that. I was listening to, stuff on the radio myself. I mean, I loved Supertramp. Oh my God. I
Oh
loved
yeah.
Journey, Foreigner.
Yeah. Oh, Journey. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
God, Journey, right? Those guitar solos. I mean, those are iconic songs and iconic guitar solos. And what's interesting is that you approach the saxophone like many guitar players. You bought an instrument or rented or whatever, and then you just let the music guide you. You said, I want to play this music, and you put it on. You got like a fingering chart, figured out how to blow, right? A guitar player figured out how
Yeah.
to tune, where the strings, what are the notes, at least the names of the strings and stuff like that. A lot of them go by tab, but you learn by ear.
Yeah.
Totally learn by ear. And it's funny because most horn players don't. We're trained, to learn to read and play at the same time. But
Yeah.
you did it like a guitar player. And that's like the connection between the Metallica, I think, and how you
Yeah.
approach saxophone.
Yeah. It's something I've learned too, like we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and what I've learned, I'm never going to be a Michael Brecker kind of player. Would I love to play like that? Yes, of course, who wouldn't? But I've learned to stay in my lane. One of my best advices I could say is when you get to a point where you're pretty darn good, there's always that desire to do more. And sometimes playing less is more. I think Miles Davis even mentioned that, sometimes less is more. And, so you'll notice with a lot of my music, I play a lot of long tones. And those long tones can be even more meaningful than playing 10 more notes. They have more of an impact on the listener, gives you something more emotion, more feel. And so that, it's just a different approach. But I've always, what I love to be more technical, of course, but I'm going to stay in my lane until I get to the point where I can do, if I can do more things, then I'll do it then. But I always try to tell people, they're like, how do you do it? How do you get that kind of, I says, you got to identify where you're at and get great at what you're at, and then start taking baby steps towards adding more things that are going to challenge you.
How did you find your lane?
What I've realized, I'm more of a melodic kind of prettier. I think it's just who I am as a person. I really like melody. I like feel, emotion. And I found out real quick that was more me than like, some of this other stuff like straight ahead jazz, which I'd love to. I got to see Michael Brecker once, and I was so blown away that I actually felt like I was hallucinating. He was so amazing. I was just like, I don't even know how he does it. But I'm like, that is way out of my lane. And it's not going to be me, because the path I chose was ear training. I didn't choose that technical Berklee College of Music, learning all this stuff. I do everything by ear and feel. So, it's a different approach, and I'm comfortable with it, and I like it. And I think there's some advantages to it versus, like, if I really had to read, I would sound like a robot for me. But I know some guys can read and sound natural, but like for me, I would sound very unnatural if I had to play reading a chart.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you for sharing this. And the funny thing, it's interesting how you described yourself and your playing, because listening to your music, yes, you're very melodic. I can feel the emotion. And the funny thing, though, I keep going back to Metallica. And it's like it's totally
Oh my
different.
gosh, it's crazy. Like, I don't listen to a lot of radio, but like I have a few Pandora stations that I listen to, like when I'm driving. I'm always listening. James Brown, that's a guarantee. Curtis Mayfield, that's a guarantee. Love Bill Withers. I've got my Metallica station. So people are like, you kind of look more like a rock. You look like you should be playing electric guitar in a heavy metal band than you are a saxophone, because I'm all
Yes.
tattooed up.
Yeah.
I don't look like maybe your typical saxophone player. I don't know if there is a look, but they're like, you look like you belong in a rock band. And so maybe this is the Metallica look, but with the saxophone instead. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I'm just thinking to myself too, the other question I had was, I'm curious, because you were into Metallica and into, all these other influences and stuff, why you didn't take up guitar?
I don't know. It was, I think there was a brief moment when I was young again. My grandparents were amazing. I mean, they such inspirations in all areas of life. I learned, so much from them. And I remember a couple times she's like, "Do you want to go get a guitar? Christmas is coming. We can go look at guitars." I'm like, "Grandma, that looks too hard. I don't know if I can get my finger." And now I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 200. Well, after surgery, I'm 220 pounds. I was 230, but I at the time I didn't think my fingers were long enough, and now I got really big hands now. So now I'd probably be very easy to play guitar, but I just don't feel like I could express myself the same way as I do on a saxophone.
And the thing is, you're staying in your lane. I love that.
I'm staying in my lane. I don't play clarinet. I don't play flute. I've never had any interest. It's weird, as like never had interest playing a flute or clarinet. Do I like listening to it? Yes. Oh yeah, I love it. It's been sax, soprano, alto, tenor. I've never even been interested in playing baritone because it's not my kind of style for my kind of music. Those are my instruments, and I love playing all of them. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, now, let me ask you too. So, you were doing respiratory therapy for a while, but then only recently have you now gone full time with music. Can you talk about what full time with music means? What are you doing throughout your day? And this will also lead to some of the Westcoast Sax stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I've been suffering back issues for many, many years. I used to actually race professional motocross. Wow. So when I was younger, from about 5 years on until I was in my mid-20s, I raced motocross, which caused all this surgery, all these issues. Oh. So I talked with my wife, and I said, now that I'm in it now I'm like really committed to it. I'm having so much fun writing this music and doing it. And you just got to believe in yourself, and nothing's going to happen overnight. You got to stay with it. And I just felt like maybe this is the time, maybe this, after going through all these surgeries, it's much easier for me to sit in my studio here and create music than, out if I have to turn a patient or lift somebody. I'm in a different physical place now where I got to be kind of careful, and then I got my, the Westcoast Sax thing that I started in 2014. I'm doing that as well. So I'm kind of like 50% that and 50% music, but the music's starting to kind of, maybe it's like 60-40 now. I don't know, but I'll continue doing both because I have a passion for that as well. I've always been a hands-on crafty kind of guy. And I learned that from my grandfather because he used to build homes and he taught me how to use a saw and a screwdriver and how you change a toilet and how you cut a hole in the wall to put electrical wires in it. So I've always been very hands-on.
Yeah, and we're going to talk in a little bit about how you built out your studio and all that kind of thing. Let me pursue this path for a second because this is actually how I met you. When did you start Westcoast Sax? And I'm going to assume this is how you met some of the people that are now dear friends to you.
Yeah, 2014. I got into it, and for the same reason a lot of people may be thinking the same thing. I got tired of spending thousands of dollars on mouthpieces, trying to find the mouthpiece that fits me. Because I look at a mouthpiece like a microphone for a vocalist, right? You got the player, the vocalist, but if they don't have the proper microphone or mouthpiece, they're not going to really be able to give the listener what they're trying to portray, what they're really feeling. So I just got tired of spending a bunch of money on mouthpieces. And that's when I met Theo, Wanne, and he agreed to work with me on making my first couple mouthpieces. The Mofo was the very first one, and then the Moam. And so I would design them. We would go back and forth. He would send me a prototype. I'd say, nope, it needs more of this. And then he would change that. And we did that for several years. And then I got into refacing and filing and doing all this, Dremel tools, drilling out chambers, all experimental. I had nobody trained me on it. Nobody told me how to do it. And did I mess up some mouthpieces? Oh yeah. I had a lot that had to go in the trash can, but that's how you learn. That's how you learn. And I got to a point where I'm like, I can do this myself. And I felt it was going to be more meaningful for me to take it on myself.
Oh.
And so at that point, we kind of parted ways. Everything's good. He's a fantastic guy and very smart. And I decided to go on my own and do it myself. And so I've been, ever since then, all my models that you see now are all made by me. I design them. I have my blanks are all made here in the US. So everything is made here. Basically, my blanks are sent to me once I start prototyping. And we go back probably 3, 4, 5 times on a mouthpiece before I get to a point where I'm happy with the blank. And then it goes all hand finished from that point where I'm hand filing the baffle, I'm opening the chamber, I'm thinning the rails, I'm getting the tip thickness just right. So it's just, I love the process of developing and creating something that is going to, hopefully be, more pleasurable for a player, so they can just pick it up, put it on, slap the reed on, and not have to really think about the mouthpiece, just play what they're feeling and not be worrying about, oh gosh, this mouthpiece plays sharp here, or it chirps, or it squeaks. So my whole goal it was all about playability and performance. And I feel like I got pretty darn good at it. And I get a lot of satisfaction, helping players and achieving, the kind of sound they're looking for. And from that point, I met Boney. Boney was my first, big A-list player. And he actually purchased my mouthpieces without me even knowing about it. He actually bought them from Manny at the Horn Connection, which I'm sure you're familiar with Manny.
Yes.
So Manny's been, he's carried my stuff. He bought them, and then he called me one day and was just like, these things are incredible. Your alto piece is so good. It made me want to start playing alto more. And I was like, are you kidding? That was a pretty big compliment. I'm like, wow. So he's been on my stuff ever since. I think this January, it'll be 4 years that Boney's been on my alto and tenor mouthpiece. And so now he's currently playing one of my newer models called the Soul Machine, and absolutely loves it. Most of the guys now are on the Soul Machine, but I tell people when they call me, which one's better? Which one? They're all equally as good. They're just a little different, because the way I face the mouthpiece, you do have to do certain things the same way every time. One thing is I like a nice flat table because you don't want to have reed problems. So for me, a mouthpiece should be able to use any reed. And there's some brands out there that, where the reed picky, right? Where they only, certain reeds work better. My goal was to not have a reed picky mouthpiece. I want you to be able to use any reed you want, synthetic, real cane, whatever it may be. And also getting the facing curve correct is just gigantic. If you don't have the curve correct, that really makes life difficult. So if you can get the facing curve right and the table right, you should be able to use any reed. And so that's kind of my motto, that's been my motto: performance and playability. And basically I look at my mouthpiece as it's a tool for the player to be able to express themselves in the best way they can.
Yeah, and not get in the way.
You should never, I think Kirk Whalum even mentioned it one time I talked to him. He doesn't want to have to think about his mouthpiece when he's playing, like it gets sharp here, it does this. If I go this way, it could do this. You don't want to have to ever think about your mouthpiece. I mean, the reeds, as you know, reeds can be a nightmare. So you do have to have a reed that is not, a dead reed that just doesn't play. Yeah. But if you have a good mouthpiece with the right foundation, with good flat table, nice rails, good facing curve, you should be able to play anything you want on it. So one thing I did learn, it was interesting. I was at NAMM probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I ran into Ernie Watts, the great Ernie Watts, and I asked him, I didn't even talk about my mouthpiece, didn't bring it up at all. I just said, hey, if you had one bit of advice for any saxophone player, what would that be? And he said, Matt, I've been on this mouthpiece, as you know, for 20, 30 years, and I haven't switched. And he says, if you can find a mouthpiece that will give you at least 80% of what you're looking for, call it a day, be done, and learn it and get good at it. Because you get, a lot of, I get a lot of players that will ask me, if I buy this mouthpiece, will I sound like Boney James? And I'm very, very transparent. I say, you know what? Your sound is your sound. This is a tool for you to play your music and hopefully make it easier for you. And I never tell them you're going to sound like Boney or Euge or Jakeem Joyner. I just say this mouthpiece is going to play great. And if you like the way they play, that's something that goes back to the ear training. You got to go and study their music. You got to study their phrasing. You got to study their style. And that would get you closer to playing like them. But to me, I always think that, we all have our own sound and we should embrace our sound, and we all can get better. And if you're not happy with something, it really comes down to the player. It's, and you find so many people just buying mouthpiece after mouthpiece thinking they're going to get that sound. And what they find out is that after 2-3 weeks, a month, they sell the mouthpiece and they get another one, because it really comes down to the player, and you got to put the work in. It's all about, are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to put the work in needed to get you closer? And again, I used to emulate everybody. I spent my whole time emulating all these players and ear trained and worked on tone and pitch. And if there was a phrasing thing that I liked, or a style or certain licks, I would work on those, and I would just do it over and over and over and over. Repetition.
And that's how that's how you learn. And then people worry that they're going to be seen as like a copy of. But the thing, though, is that by emulating everybody else, you see what you like, what you don't like, and then you become your own person.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to Kenny G, he'll tell you one of his biggest influence was Grover Washington Jr. And if you listen closely to his earlier stuff, not his later stuff so much, but his earlier stuff, I hear a lot of Grover Washington and some of his licks and some of his stylings. I can hear it. So, at the end of the day, all of us, even the best of the best, all had mentors and people they looked up to get to where they're at. Everyone had someone they admired, and then you sort of develop your own sound with a little bit of their flavor, and then you develop your sound. And I would say it wasn't until about maybe 5 years ago where I actually could say I actually like my sound. And when you get to that point where you're like, okay, this is my sound, I like my sound, now I just want to work on getting better, and just work on my sound and just embrace your sound. That is God gave you that voice, and we all have different anatomy in our throats, our oral cavity, our nasal cavities. That all has a big role in tone and how you're going to sound. And you'll never sound exactly like somebody. Even if you try to copy every little lick, you're still never going to have the exact same sound. If you play the same horn, same reed, same mouthpiece, same ligature, we'll never all have the same. We'll never have that exact same sound. But I really don't think that's what we want anyways. I think we all want to have our own sound with some of that influence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to take a left turn here just for a second, because your mouthpiece, MOAM, people may not know what that stands for. So I just want to address that. Can you just, because it's really cool.
Oh my gosh. As you know, most of the names I have are kind of funny because, as a person, I'm a jokester. I like to joke all the time. Learned that from my grandfather. He always was cracking jokes. So I just come up with funny names because it's just who I am. But the mofo name, I think most people would know what that means without having to say it. And what it was is when I played it for the first time, I went, holy cow, this is like insane. And then the first thing that I said, this is a real mofo of a mouthpiece. And I'm like, oh, that's the name. That's the name. And then the Moam is a funny, it's funny. So we've all heard of the Moab, which is the mother of all bombs. So I called it the mother of all mouthpieces. Is it the mother of all, no, but it was just, to me, again, it was funny because of the Moab and the Moam. So it's just kind of, again, funny thing.
It's awesome.
My high roller mouthpiece, I'm in Vegas now. So you kind of get where that came from. You got all the high rollers out here. So I called it the high roller. And I'd say my sound over the years has developed to be a little more soulful than it was initially. And where the Soul Machine name came in was because of that. I'm, a little more soulful. And I'm like, I'm going to call it the Soul Machine.
And are your mouthpieces available for all the saxes?
I make them for now. I keep getting people saying, why don't you make baritone? Do you have a problem with baritone players? I'm like, no, I'm not a baritone sax player. So the reason why is that I have to be able to play it and say that I would play it. If I can't say I would play the mouthpiece, that it's not a thing I could sell. I got to be committed to saying, like, this is really good and I can confirm it. And since I'm not a baritone player, I just feel like I don't really have a place. Could I make one? And I would know how to make it, but I don't think I could be my best making a baritone at this point, since I don't play baritone.
That's cool. And that's, again, staying in your lane.
Stay in your lane. It's all, it comes back to stay in your lane.
Now, let me ask you something too. And one of the themes I'm noticing is that you, and this is on your website too, pursuing your dreams. You go after your dreams. And I'm so curious how you had the courage, actually, I'm going to use that word, to reach out to Theo Wanne and say, hey, let's make mouthpieces.
I reached out to him because, he's been the guru for, I don't know how long. He's sort of one of the pioneers in mouthpiece making, has a wonderful website with a lot of knowledge on even vintage mouthpieces. Like, if you want to know something about an Autolink and all the models and what year and why they changed, he's got a great section on his website where you can learn about stuff that you would never know. And I just was impressed with that. He's a great guy, very humble, and he's also funny too. He cracks me up. So it was a good fit. It was a good fit. It was easy. And I worked with Brian, which is his right-hand man, and great relationship. It was a great thing. And I would say I'm very grateful for, being able to have the opportunity to do that, because he doesn't do it with very, very many people. I think at this point, I don't even know if he's doing it for any more than, I think he's still doing it for Phil Tone, but he's not really doing much of making stuff for people at this time. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I think he's kind of gotten away from that a little bit. But I just thought it was time for me to go on my own. And I just felt like I could give more of a personal touch. I love speaking to players, as you know. Yeah. Anytime anyone calls me, you can get a hold of me. I mean, if I miss the call, I call right back. I mean, a lot of times I'm on the phone for an hour, and sometimes I sell nothing. And a lot of times I even steer people away from not buying. In
all transparency, we are having a little bit of an internet connection thing going on here, but you were saying how, people can call you and you would talk. Can you expand a little bit more upon that?
Yeah, I like to try to help people find what they're looking for. And a lot of times it's not selling a mouthpiece to them, to be real honest with them, because once I ask them what they're playing on, the style of music, what they're trying to achieve. Oh, I play on an Autolink, and I do have since then I do have a mouthpiece called the Throwback, which is a throwback of the Autolink, and it's a great piece. But before that, a lot of these questions were, I want to try your Moam or your Soul Machine or whatever, and this is a contemporary sounding mouthpiece, much brighter, much more projection, much more edgy. And quite honestly, I just don't feel like, if that's the sound you're looking for, I don't think I have something that's going to fit your needs. And I don't want to, have you get something and then be dissatisfied, even though I offer 5-day return policy on all my stuff, because I don't want anybody but being stuck with a mouthpiece that they're spending a lot of money on and then have to try to resell it and lose money. So I always, I have no problem doing returns. Thank God, knock on wood, I get very few returns. And I think it's because of the phone calls. It's the customer service. It's the asking the questions. And I have tons of videos for people to listen. And so I just want to make sure people get what they're really looking for. And I said, a lot of times it doesn't end up in a sell of a mouthpiece.
I know a lot of mouthpiece makers and stuff, and I see, them having other people demo their mouthpieces. Some mouthpiece makers demo their own, by themselves. First of all, it takes a lot of work to make a mouthpiece. There's no question about that. It's a full-time job when you think about it. And it's hard to keep your sax chops up, in addition to doing that. So I think it's pretty impressive that you demo all your mouthpieces. What made you decide to put up like your own demos as opposed to maybe promoting other people playing your mouthpieces? And what do you decide on to play? What do you think about playing when you demo your mouthpieces? Is there something that you're trying to come across, or, that kind of thing?
The first thing is, like, before I got into doing this, I didn't feel like there was enough videos myself when I was looking for mouthpieces before I got into this. I'm like, gosh, it'd be nice to hear some videos. Again, I'm not thinking I'm going to sound like this person, but at least gives me some kind of idea. So that was one thing that I'm like, for sure, I'm doing videos. Second point about why me and not as many of the other people. I do post, you'll see Boney videos and these other people, but I feel like by me doing it, it gives a little more of a personal touch. I think people can look at me as more of an ordinary person, not like some superstar sax player that's been on the radio for 20 years. I feel like it allows people to connect a little more with me. Wow. And be like, okay, and so I just felt like it was more of a personal touch to do it myself. And I post other videos of other people when they send me videos, but I just felt like it was more of a personal touch.
That's a great idea. That's an awesome idea. And you know what? I wanted to touch upon this one thing before I forget. You're good friends with Euge Groove right now. So yes. Yeah, how did that come about? And also, how has he not only influenced whether it's your playing, but also you in like a business sense?
So how it started, he actually bought my buzz screw, which you see in the neck screw, right?
Yep.
That was years and years ago. And then I saw a picture. An order came in, and, his name pops up. I'm like, oh my gosh, he ordered 2 of them. I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. And then it was years later, he asked me about refacing one of his mouthpieces. He played on the Seagulls for many, many years, for most of his career, and said he had it refaced by some other people and just wasn't, where he wanted it. He needed to get more out of the mouthpiece. So he told me if I could reface it and make it play, I would be his hero forever. So I got that mouthpiece, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous because it's like, I can't screw this one up. So I spent my time on it, and I got that thing playing. We're like, gosh, I could actually play this mouthpiece. It's actually pretty good now. So I sent it to him, and I still was nervous. I still didn't know if he was going to like it. I sent it to him. He called me up. He was ecstatic. He goes, I can't believe this. This thing is unbelievable. So from that point, he mentioned, he's like, why don't we just do a Euge Groove mouthpiece? And that's kind of what started our relationship. So I worked with him for like over a year, developing a mouthpiece for him, back and forth, and these guys are looking for certain, they're looking for certain things, and the mouthpiece has to perform a certain way because they want to maintain their sound, the sound that everyone recognizes. And so we worked on his mouthpiece called the Hog, which is House of Groove, and that's sort of a thing he's got called the House of Groove, and that's where the Hog name came in. So we called it the Hog. That's and awesome. So we've become very good friends. He's been at my house. I've been at his house. He's such a sweet, dear man. He has been so helpful. I cannot thank him enough because he's helped me with my audio, how to record properly. How do you set your effects, your reverbs, your delays, your EQs. I really was not, I would just call myself kind of an average novice sort of person at that point with setting the audio. But working with him, I learned so much from him. I was a sponge. I was taking notes, and it was just amazing, the difference. And he actually, a lot of people don't know this, but Euge actually mixes and masters for a lot of the biggest names out there. And most people don't know this, but like he just did Rick Braun's album, Vincent Ingala, Brian Simpson. He works with a lot of big name people. So he's got the gear, and that's a big passion of his.
That's awesome to know. And you know what? This is going to lead right into what we were talking about before we came on the air. Your studio. You know, like people that are watching this on YouTube are seeing, you know, like all the soundproofing and stuff like that, some of the equipment there. And, you know, I've seen, you know, like your Facebook videos, you know, YouTube videos and stuff, and you've got this like decked out room and stuff like that. Can you talk about your studio?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you'd like, I can give you a little tour of it if you want.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to flip the phone around here. What you're seeing here is I'm using a Mac computer, and I also have a Mac laptop. Got my studio monitors, which are really a big deal when you're recording, so you can really hear what's going on.
Which brand are they?
These are the Callies, and they're probably one of the most reasonable monitors. That it's the same guys that were the engineers for JBL, and then they started their own company called Callie, and I have their reference line, and they are very reasonable. I think you can get a pair like this for about $700, $800, and I'm going to tell you, it makes a huge difference. So anyways, that I'm just turning my volume down. You can see my screen there. You can see I got all this soundproofing everywhere. I did all this myself. Under my desk here is a ginormous subwoofer, which makes a really big difference. Over here, here's my rack. So what I got here, if you look here, the top, this top interface, or not interface, but this is a preamp. I use the Neve 5211. And Neve is very, very famous for preamplifiers. Most of these guys are using Neves. Also, I have another preamp called the BAE 1073, which is a copy of the Neve 1073, which is a very, very famous preamp. Then I have my power strip. I have an effects unit here, the TC Electronics. I got a DBX 160A compressor. And my recent investment was this Apogee Symphony Mark II, which is the flagship interface. And these are not cheap. I mean, you're looking at, to purchase one of these, they're anywhere from $3,500 up to $10,000, depending on how you have them configured.
Wow.
Over here, we've got my microphones. I'll take off the cover so I can show you. I've got a couple different ones.
That's a good idea.
See if I can get this one stuck. I don't know if I can get this off. Let's see. There we go. Cool. So my primary mic is this one right here, which is the AKG C14 BULS, which is a vintage microphone. I think they made these back in the 70s and 80s. I also have one called the TL2, which is the one that came right after. So I do most of my recordings on this. This mic right here is the Peluso, which is sort of a copy of the Neumann. I think it's the Neumann 49, and it's a great microphone. I really actually like recording my soprano on this because it really gives it a nice warm sound. And then over here,
got your saxophone.
You can see the saxophone. So I've got this alto is a Mark VI, 86,000 serial number.
Oh,
that silver soprano, that's a 5-digit Mark VI. Wow. The one next, the tenor there, that's another Mark VI. I play a 92,000. And there's another matching silver plated Mark VI soprano. That's 121,000 serial number. And then over here is my 65,000 Mark VI tenor. And then the back wall here, and you see all these videos I do. So if you look right here, that's my neck strap. But I actually put my iPhone right in that holder, and I shoot my videos from there.
Oh,
I literally
interesting.
mount it, and it's got a swivel, and you can swivel it any way you want. And that's where I actually put my my cell phone. And then I got my little bass traps. They call these bass traps, and I have them in all the corners. And these are all the foam. These are, I think, 2-inch foam panels. And honest to God, I bought them off Amazon.
Oh, cool. Now, how do you know
And
exactly
these,
where to put them?
well, you know, every room's different. So let me go back and turn my camera around here. There is a lot of good videos on YouTube, as you know. And being that I wasn't an expert in audio, I just watched a lot of videos on placement. And basically, you do like a clap test. So you go in your room and you clap and you try to hear if you hear any reflections, because you want these panels to absorb any type of reflections. That way you get a real pure recording. So basically you space them out to where you're not hearing any of those reverberations or reflections in the room. So I also have a rug underneath where I'm sitting. And then I have my ceiling also covered with foam. So I would say acoustically, my room is treated pretty darn well. And it's just all about placement, how many you use, the type of monitors are super important. So when you're recording, you get a real true sense of what it's going to sound like. I also use earphones. I like to use these. Euge Groove recommended these, and I've been using them ever since. I use the Sony. I don't know if you can see this, but the Sony. They're called the MDR 7506, and these are reasonable. You can get these for like $150. They're really lightweight. I have like 4 different headphones, but I actually prefer using those. And when I'm recording, I record, with my headphones so I can hear all the detail. But when I go back to really make sure my recording sounds well, I'll play it through my monitors with no headphones. Then I'll play it through my headphones. Then I'll send a recording to my iPhone that's recorded. So I really, because it all sounds a little different. It may sound incredible with your monitors, but then you go on your headphone and you'll be like, oh, wow, it's too loud. The sax is too loud. Or, I try to get it as close as I can. And I check it, I'll even go to my car. I'll send a clip to my phone and I'll play it through my car. So how does it sound through my car? How does it sound? Because a lot of people these days listen through their iPhones.
Yeah.
And, and if it sounds good on the iPhone, pretty much, then I know we're pretty safe. So yeah, the gear is very, very important. You got to have a great preamp. You got to have a good interface, and you got to have a good microphone. And then, of course, the software I use what they call the PreSonus Studio One Artist 5, and it's very reasonable. You can get it for like $200, and it's a one-time purchase. And you get free upgrades when they upgrade the software. They'll send you a link, and then you just upgrade it. And I would say the Studio One, most guys are probably using Logic Pro.
Yeah.
And Pro Tools. Yeah. But I have found that the PreSonus to me is by far the easiest drag and drop type of DAW that you can buy.
That is good to know. That's good to know, because people, that I've taken courses with Pro Tools. I've, taken courses with Logic. Logic is a little easier than Pro Tools, I think. I know Pro Tools could be more powerful, but Logic's definitely getting better. But ease is always so important.
Oh yeah, the Studio One, and they have like, they have different. They got like Artist 5, Artist 4, then they got Studio One Professional if you want to do mastering. So they got different ones, and the only complaint I have with PreSonus Studio One is you really can't get someone on the phone. It's very difficult. Everything's done through email. So if you run into a problem, you're sending an email, and then you start a ticket, and it sometimes could be days later before you even hear back from them. And sometimes you need it fixed like today. So that's the only downfall. And I don't know if the Logic or these other ones, maybe they have a better customer service with that, but that's the only thing that I would complain about. But it works pretty much seamlessly and flawlessly. I really don't have any issues.
Let me ask you, so when you say you're sending these clips to your phone, listening to it in the car, is this after, you've done, I mean, do you do your own mastering or anything like that? Or these
some
dry
of my
clips?
stuff. Yeah. So like One More Kiss, which is that song is going to go to radio in March. That was mastered and mixed by Euge Groove. And it's really, to be quite honestly, it's going to be really difficult to, get something on his level. I can do it pretty good. I'm never going to be on his level of mixing and mastering. So some of my album cuts that are not songs I'm going to try to promote, that I'm going to throw on an album, I'll master and mix myself. So I know enough how to master and mix. I've got the right gear to do it. And it comes out good. But, if you're trying to take something to radio, I highly recommend sending it to an expert, like a Euge Groove. He does it. He absolutely loves doing it. He's very busy because he's out touring and playing, but it might take a while to get something back, but it's well worth it at the end. His quality of what he sends you back is just blows your mind when you hear it for the first time. Just unbelievable.
That's so awesome. That's so great to hear. And thank you for the studio tour. I have one more question with regard to this. So you're shooting your videos, right? You said you showed us, that was so cool. Your iPhone mount is like in a top corner of your room.
Yeah.
So that's your video. But people always have this question, well, how do I, have the video and the audio be great quality? And so a lot of people will shoot the video with a separate camera and then the audio is on a laptop or a desktop through a digital audio workstation. Is that what you do for your videos?
So it's a two-part thing for me. So I only use that video as the video portion. I do not use it for audio whatsoever because, as you know, the iPhone audio is not very good.
Yes.
So what I do is I'll record it like I would record through my DAW and, through all my gear. And then I take that audio, bounce it down, and then I bring that video track. I have a program, there's a free program, and I'll tell you what it is for Apple. And you can get this for free. It's called VideoPad Video Editor. And it's got a star on it. That's the logo. And you can download that for free on the App Store. I use VideoPad here. Actually, I'll show it to you right now. Let me show you how this works. Okay. Let me turn my camera on here.
You use this instead of like an iMovie or
I tried doing that, and this is just easier. So I go to VideoPad and I hit new project, and basically you'll take your song like here. Let's just do something for fun here. Let me just grab a song. So okay. I'll grab a song. I drop it in there. There's the song. Then I take it down and drop it down into audio. Now you see it down there. I don't have a video, but I would load a video here, and then I drop the video here. So the video's on top, and now there'll be audio with that video because you can't turn off the audio as far as I know when you're recording on your iPhone. And then I remove the audio from the iPhone, and then I sync it up, even like how you clap.
Yes.
I've just gotten to a point where I'm able to do it. It's close enough to where you can't tell. I just know where everything lines up, and that's where I do it. And then you hit export video right here, and that's it. It's done. It's easy. Is it? I would say if anything, it's just time consuming. It's
yes.
It's just it's tedious. And
do you know? Do you know of a Windows equivalent for that?
I really don't, because I've been on Mac, but I would guarantee this VideoPad editor might even be for Windows too.
All right, I'm going to look that up for people. I use Macs also, but I know a lot of people, Android, Windows, that kind of thing. So I got to make a mental note to do that.
Go to your App Store and just type in Video Editor.
Free.
You know,
Yeah.
some of them are free and some are not. And, you know, I just went with the free one. Why not? Right. If it's free, take it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, now we've alluded to this, and I'm coming up to the crescendo here, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
we wanted to get to your history. We wanted to get to the mouthpiece making, how you met certain people, how they influenced you, your theme of being handy and pursuing your dreams. I mean, that's definitely obvious here, and your theme of pursuing your dreams and being handy in terms of creating your own music. And now you're with your wife's, not blessings, but just pushing you. Now you've got some songs out, and
Yeah.
you have One Last Kiss out for digital right now. It's going to be on the radio in March. But can you talk about your new music coming up, or coming out, I should
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. So that actually is One More Kiss. And so that song, I co-wrote that song with Jeffrey Carruthers, he's the same producer that produced Boney James' first 3 or 4 albums. So this guy, another phenomenal guy, amazing, super easy to work with. He wants nothing but the best for you, and he's willing to put in whatever work necessary to make sure you get something that you really love. And so he actually wrote the track. I laid down the verse, the chorus, the solo, the intro, the outro, the bridge, and then he comps it all together, and we go back and forth. I like this. I don't like that. Can you add this back in? We kind of go back and forth. But yeah, One More Kiss. Again, the names kind of come really quick to me with songs. I know it's difficult for a lot of artists that they have a hard time naming songs. But for me, it just brought me back to when I met my wife for the first time, and that first date, which I had a gig that night. She actually came to my gig, and she told me, if you talk to her, she had met musicians before, and they're like, "Oh, I'm great and wonderful." And she's like, "Gosh, I hope to God he's good." She told me, and so she still talks about it to this day. And I remember serenading her on that first gig, but I left her that night and gave her a kiss, but I wanted another kiss. And so something about the song, it put me back in time when I met her, and that's how I came up with the song One More Kiss.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It is hard for people to name songs, but that's cool how you came up with that.
Yeah, and I have another one that's on iTunes and everywhere called Spanish Skies. That one I fully produced on my own, mastered, mixed, arranged, did everything.
Oh, wow.
That one's available. And that one I actually had named it something different, and I can't even remember what it was. But she said to me, that kind of has a Spanish vibe about it. And I was listening to it. I'm like, actually, I think you got a good point. So then I thought, okay, so it's kind of a Spanish vibe. And then I was thinking about being in Spain and looking at a pretty skyline, and then Spanish skies. That's how that one came out.
Awesome.
And then the other one that's actually releases tomorrow. It'll be available on all platforms. It's called Let's Chill Tonight. And when you hear the song, it's very chill. It's very relaxing. That one I wrote, produced all on my own, mastered, mixed, everything. And that one has this very chill vibe. And again, a lot of this always goes back to my wife. I just was thinking, I want to chill. I'm going to chill with my wife tonight. So let's chill tonight, and so that's how that name came out. So, and then I have another one coming that is being produced by Jeff and Euge Groove, which is called First Glance. And it's actually done. It just has to be mastered and mixed, which I'm hoping that it'll be done next week. And that one, the name again, tied back to my wife. A lot of this ties back to my wife. It was that first time I saw her in Temecula, our first date. We met in Temecula, Old Town. She got out of the car, and when I looked at her the first time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm done." That first glance, that first look. And so that's how that name came out. And so that's going to be that's a really nice one. That one, I play tenor on that one. And some of the songs, like One More Kiss, I'm actually playing soprano and tenor. So I double on tenor. So I kind of enjoy having a little variety. Like, some songs you're good with just one instrument, but sometimes it sounds good to throw on an alto or soprano with the tenor. Just gives
Yeah,
a little more flavor.
absolutely. And you know what? Since you're talking about names, when you put your EP out, the name of
Yep.
that is Never Too Late. So we were talking
Yep.
about that beforehand, but let's share that now.
Yeah. So, I was thinking, what am I going to name this thing? I've always felt like I'm good at naming stuff. And the first thing that came to mind was like, here I'm later in life. I feel young, but I'm not a young spring chicken anymore. And being that perseverance and never giving up and pursuing your dream. That's where Never Too Late. To me, it's never too late. I don't care if you're 60, you're 70, you're 80. It's never too late. If that's the time to do it, it's never too late to do what you dream to do. And that's where the name came.
That is so awesome. And, that's another theme, that I definitely see here. For sure, you're always pursuing your dreams, and having your grandparents' influence in many ways, your grandmother with the music part, your grandfather with, building your own things, right? And look
Yeah.
how it's helped you build your studio. It's helped you to be, to also not just build your studio physically, with all the soundproofing and stuff like that, but also having I don't want to say the word courage, but the drive to figure out new things, not be afraid to explore new things, to learn new things, mixing, mastering, right? Putting out albums. We were talking about, you're learning as you're going, and all these things that, when you're supposed to put things out and all that kind of stuff, learning how to make mouthpieces, right? Figuring out the instrument, how to play the saxophone. You're
Yeah.
self-taught. I think you're the only person I think I've had on this podcast that is totally self-taught.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, I'm the kind of guy, like when you go to IKEA and you buy where you got to screw everything together, you buy a piece of furniture and nothing is put together. You got to literally spend 10 hours to put together a chair because it's that complicated. I'm the guy that I don't read instructions. I don't read manuals. And I think I don't have patience. If I have one downfall is I don't have patience. So I just figure it out. And sometimes I screw it together wrong. And I'm like, oh gosh, I got to undo this whole entire thing. And I go back and do it again. But I feel like there's a little something extra you get out of life when you have to figure it out on your own.
And you know
And
what? That goes back to learning by ear, our first conversation, and how it's not easy. It can be very hard for people. But you said, and I totally believe this to be true, people give up too soon. And
you
that's
give
when they
up
have the
too
problems.
soon. Yeah. I mean, to me, I believe God created us all equal. We all have the same. Yeah, maybe there's certain people that it comes easier for, right? Some people, it's just some things are easier. But I feel like if you're willing to put the time in and you're passionate about what you're doing, I feel like anybody can do anything. And
No
that's my
matter,
belief. I think every one of us that wants to do something more, we all have that ability to do it if we're willing to put in the time. And that's the difference. That's the difference.
and age does not matter.
Age doesn't matter. I mean, there's guys that are in their 70s, 80s and sound unbelievable playing the saxophone. So, I'm in my late 40s now and I've been playing for, quite a while, but, and I really never thought I was going to be putting out an EP or getting into recording and going on the radio and all that. It wasn't part of my game plan. And over the years, I've had so many people saying, "What do you have a CD I can buy?" And I've heard that so many times, but it wasn't until my wife says, "When are you going to do this? This is ridiculous." And she really got me thinking. She's, without her, I probably would not be where I would not be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Honestly, she's a huge influence, and she's very artistic herself. She's not a musician, but she was a hula dancer. When I met her, she was a hula dancer. She does crafts. She makes quilts. She sews. She knits. She's very, very artistic. So she has her. I go to her, and half the time she'll say, "Well, you don't listen to me anyways. You do what you want." I'm like, "No, it's important. I want to hear. I may not agree, but I want to hear what you have to say."
Yeah, for sure. And
Go to your trusted family, friends, and don't be embarrassed. I mean, you got to fall down and get beat up a lot of times as part of the process of growing and succeeding. Nothing good comes easy. It takes time.
No, that's definitely for sure. That's definitely for sure. And I was going to say too, she's definitely been an inspiration for you and a driving force, throughout, based on this conversation from everything that you've talked about for the most part. And that's really awesome. And that's very cool that you have that resource to use.
Yeah. And my parents, I haven't got to talk about them a lot, but my mother is just absolute. If you met her, you would love her. You'd want her to be your mom. She's that kind of mom. And my dad's a fighter. He's tough. He's tough love. So it wasn't always easy, but I did gain a lot of my toughness. I don't mean like physically tough, but where he's tough, and he was very strict about things. And I looking during the time, I may not have liked it, but as you get older, you realize like you're kind of glad that your dad was that way. So my dad, he wasn't really pushing me to do music or anything, but anything I did when I used to race motocross, because he was also a professional motocross racer, he always wanted, it was never good enough. You can do better than this. You're not, he would always push. So I would have to say there's some influence from him as well in a different way.
Yeah, the drive, the drive, the grit.
And honestly, all my friends, Facebook friends, social media friends, family friends, all you guys have been a big inspiration to me with the support over the years, not only just with the mouthpieces, but just so many nice people, so many nice comments, and that really helps. It really inspires you and lets you know that, hey, maybe I'm doing the right thing here. So I'm very grateful for everybody that I know, including you and everyone else I know on all these social platforms. I wish we all lived in the same neighborhood so we could hang out and have jams and play and have a couple cocktails.
Absolutely. Speaking of social media, where can we find you?
So yeah, on Facebook, I have my Matt Lee page, Mattlee. And you can find me there. And I just started a Matt Lee Sax page. So, which is kind of new. So I haven't had that one going, but my Matt Lee page is my primary page. I'm on Instagram. There's a Westcoast Sax page and there's a brand new Matt Lee Sax page. I'm on YouTube, a Westcoast Sax YouTube channel and a Matt Lee Sax channel. I think those are the three platforms I pretty much work with. And then of course my website is www.mattleesax.com. I couldn't just go Matt Lee because that was already taken. So we had to throw the sax in there. Yeah. mattleesax.com. And then for the mouthpiece business, westcoastsax.com.
And let me also ask you too, we've mentioned this. How can people, your music is coming out digitally first. So I'm going to say that it's going to be they could probably find it on your website and anywhere that they listen digitally.
Yeah, it's actually available right now as we speak. So like One More Kiss, you can purchase that on iTunes. If you have Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, you can listen to it now. And that goes for Spanish Skies. And then Let's Chill Tonight goes live tomorrow. Tomorrow it'll be launched live.
Okay. And this episode, by the time this episode airs, it will be out. So that's awesome. So you'll have 3 songs out.
Absolutely. And then I got 2 more coming. First Glance, I'm hoping middle of November. And that's going to be, like I said, that one was mixed, mastered by Euge Groove and Jeff Carruthers. And then my other one will be following up behind it. I haven't figured out the name for that one yet because I'm not even done with the song yet. Sometimes I got to listen to the song a little bit and then the name comes.
Will you be, and I know you just had some huge surgery recently.
Yeah, I did.
Will you be touring?
Yeah. So the plan is, after, working with, the guys I'm working with, they're like, are you prepared for this? Are you ready? Because once this hits radio, you're going to be getting the phone calls and you're going to People are going to want to see you out there. Your fans are going to want to see you. So yeah, the answer is yes. I plan on it. My recovery time, according to my surgeon, is about 6 months.
Wow.
I can tell you now, I was using a walker, and as of today, I'm not using a walker anymore.
Awesome.
My back it's going to take a while to heal. I go for my first doctor appointment next week to see what my progress. I'm getting physical therapy starting next week, but I'm feeling good. I'm not playing the sax. I can't lift more than a gallon of milk right now.
Oh,
So
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
I'm very tempted to weigh the soprano because I think a soprano might weigh as much as a gallon of milk.
Okay. I think so. If it's a heavy gallon, I think so for sure.
I think a gallon of milk is like 8 pounds, and I want to say a soprano might be 7 or 8 pounds. So I may start trying to noodle around on my soprano just to keep my chops up, because you know how it is. If you stop playing for months, oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's like learning how to play the saxophone again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start doing that. And in the meantime, what I'm doing now is I'm just developing more music. I'm writing new music that maybe I can't play now, but it'll be ready to go.
Yeah, I was okay, there's a couple more questions I did want to ask too. I was wondering if you had gotten back to playing the saxophone, or even just playing mouthpieces just to keep your chops up. But you pretty much answered that. But I'm going to be curious, how I'm sure it's going to feel much better for you to play again once the spinal fusion surgery, once the recovery period is over with. I can imagine you must have been in a lot of pain, especially playing something like a tenor that's pretty heavy.
Oh gosh, yeah. I've been for a while. I was having to use. Actually, I'll show it to you here. Do I have it here? Yes, I do. Here, I was using this, and I'm going to recommend this for anybody that suffers from back pain, neck pain.
The Sax Holder
This
Pro
device right here. I'm sure you've seen this. I think they call it the Sax Holder. Now it does look kind of funky. A lot of people say it looks like some kind of medical device, but I'll tell you what, when you put it on, all the pressure is on my shoulder, not my neck.
Yeah.
And this really helps. So I highly recommend this. And I've recommended to many people that have asked me with back problems. This is a great device for people with neck pain, back pain. It really takes the pressure off. I can't recommend this enough. I don't know if there's anything out there like this, but it works fantastic.
Yeah, that's the Sax. Is that, I think,
it's called the Sax Holder, I think it's called.
It's a Sax Holder. There's 2 iterations. There's the original one, and then there's a Sax Holder Pro. That's the newest iteration, maybe the last year or so.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Listen, you got to get it because it's even better than the iteration you have, because the part that holds your saxophone comes out a little bit more. And so there's even more support with that, and there's a little bit more flexibility. Yeah, you got to get the Sax Holder Pro.
Oh, I'm going to have to look at that then. Thank you for letting me know, because anything to take that pressure off. Also, to be quite honest with you, using the traditional neck strap that probably 90% of the people use, what I learned by using this, I noticed that I felt like my tone improved, because if you think about it, if you got a neck strap on, it's pulling down on your neck, right?
Yes.
When you go to this, there's zero pressure on your neck. I feel more free and open to play with this. And I feel way more natural, and it's just easier.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Is it the sexiest looking thing? No, but who cares?
I think it looks cool, and I use that for alto. I use the Van Doren Universal harness. It may also be called the FNH 100. I've been using that for a long time, and that's a little bit more of a contraption, but that really gets the weight off of your neck. I had lumps in the back of my neck from playing.
But don't you agree that it opens up your oral cavity and your throat?
Oh my God! Not only that too. It's, how do I want to word this? And this is going to kind of recap a little bit. You said your tone is incredibly important, right? And the thing is that if you're distracted with like your tone being bad, if you're distracted with neck pain or being uncomfortable, you're not creating. So it's these types of tools that you want to think about, and explore to help you to be more efficient. Tools that will help you be more efficient so that you could be more creative.
Well, you just go on and play and have fun. There is one more device I'm going to show you that is close, but not quite. This device here
Is that the Balam?
This is the Marmaduke, and it looks, see how it's got, I don't know if you can see this. It's
Yes.
got
Okay.
these bars. So like, you know, like the sax holder that's got the bars, this has got the bars too. And when you put it on, it almost feels as good as that, and it does look better. And
Okay.
it's very adjustable. It's very simple. And it's got a nice little brass ring with a little rubber, you know, thing that doesn't scratch your horn. But this, I know Boney's using one right now. He loved it so much he switched to this. It's the Marmaduke, and this one I think I have to use the extra wide, but they make one called the standard. So if you're not if your frame isn't as big, this is, I want to say this is the Feather 4. I think they call this the Feather 4. But if you look at the picture, hopefully people can see this. They'll be able to identify it's black it's got red stitching,
Okay.
and it's made by Marmaduke. And I know the owner, he's awesome, super awesome guy. And then there's the bottom part, and that's the hook. This right here, I actually use this a lot because it does take almost the same amount of pressure off my neck as this one. It's pretty close, and it's less bulky looking, as you can tell.
That's actually, I'm so glad you showed that because I've heard people mention the Marmaduke. I've never seen it. I don't.
And the quality, I've tried like a million of them because, again, with all my problems, I've tried everything. This by far is the best quality neck strap on the market, in my opinion. I have not seen a neck strap built this well. I mean, it is solid. It's real leather, and it is stitched together really well. And there's just no issues whatsoever. Nothing. It's very, very comfortable. I highly recommend using this. And again, that's going to take away that neck pain, back pain, and looks good. Actually, it looks good. They make it in like brown. I think you can get brown. They make it in red, green. I think.
Oh.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. If you just go on the website, Marmaduke. I don't know if it's marmaduke.com, but you just type in Marmaduke neck strap. They're on eBay. They're on Amazon, and it's a great. They're about, I want to say they're about 90 to $100. Yeah, it's not the cheapest neck strap, but I'll tell you what, it is worth every penny. It's worth every penny.
Is it adjustable in terms of, obviously, you know, the strap itself, but you know, like the horn itself, but in terms of the strap, is there any kind of adjustability in terms of, you know, like I've got very narrow shoulders.
Well, you can pull, if you look here, see these little, you can make this, you can pull it in a little tighter.
Got it. Okay.
You know, I don't have to do anything. It fits me perfect, but that's why he has the standard. He might even have a small one. I know he's got standard and he's got extra wide. But again, I'm 6'3", about 220 pounds right now as we speak.
Yeah, you're a foot taller than me.
Yeah, so I think you probably would be a standard, but I can tell you who carries them. The Horn Connection, which isn't too far from where you live. Go see Manny. He just put in an order for 20 more. I actually helped him with getting them ordered because I know the owner of the company. So that's a great place. That's local. And I think once you try it, 100% you're walking out of the store with one. Guaranteed.
Manny's Horn Connection, by the way, is in Hollywood, you know, Los Angeles area. So just to let people know if they're like, where is this place? But, you know, for everybody else listening all over the world, definitely, you know, check it out on Amazon. The Sax Holder Pro is also on Amazon, as well as the Van Doren, either FNH 100 or Universal Harness, either one of those names. All of them are on Amazon. And it's so important. Your neck strap is so important. It's a tool, it's a device, and you have to, as you said it before, even putting your studio together, you know, sometimes you have to spend the money, you know, instead of suffering, you know, being cheap, suffering.
There's certain things you just can't skimp on, you know, and one of them is you got to have a comfortable neck strap. Even if you don't have back pain, if you know, eventually you might start getting back pain if you don't have something that's going to do what these two do. You know, obviously find yourself a great mouthpiece that's going to give you, I'll go back to earning watts. I think if people are looking for the 100% perfect mouthpiece, it's like saying I'm looking for the 100% perfect wife or husband. It just doesn't exist. So find a mouthpiece that lets you get out of your own way, that's going to allow you to do the things you want to do, and call it a day. Learn it, get good at it, and call it a day. And focus your efforts on getting better and working on the things you want to work on.
You know what? This is a great way to end the podcast, and I have to commend you. I've known you for a few years now. You're an inspiration, and even more of an inspiration to me now that I know more about you and how, you've gone from a self-taught person and explored many areas. You taught yourself saxophone, you taught yourself how to make mouthpieces. Now you taught yourself how to mix and master, all these types of things, create recordings, create your own studio over there. It's just such an inspiration, and it's motivating. And I love the fact that you're pursuing your dream and you're staying in your lane.
That's exactly right. That's the best advice I could give anybody.
Cool. Thanks so much, Matt.
I appreciate everything. You have an awesome day.